We're now on the ensemble effects. These work very much like choruses in how they function. I'll explore the first one with an initialized patch as usual, but there's of course some tweaks that we're going to want to do. I like to bring my break and sustain all the way up, and let's start off with noise. And now let's route to our effects. Insert effect 1. I'll choose ensemble, and I'm going to go to the individual outputs, which are going to feed these analyzers right here. I have a stereo spectrum analyzer here on the left, and then a stereo oscilloscope here on the right. So let's see what they look like. Very nice. And let me initialize this ensemble effect by putting everything at 0, and I'll start out by putting the sound all the way wet. So this effect is pretty simple. Let's look at the block diagram in the manual. We have a mono in, stereo out. This ensemble effect has 3 chorus blocks that use LFOs to create subtle shimmering. It might just be a single LFO with phase offset. Let's actually try to figure that out as we're exploring it. It gives a 3-dimensional depth and spread of the sound because the signal's output from left, right, and center. So let's go back and let's see what it looks like. When we turn it on, the depth control will increase our delay. Speed never goes to 0, so we'll always have subtle modulation from the LFO. By turning up depth, you can see that we do see cone filtering. We are adding delay, and then you will see them moving because of the slight LFO rate. So if I turn up the LFO speed, you can see that the left and right channels seem to be offset by, I don't know, 90 degrees or so. Now we can also see what Shimmer does, which is it simply adds a slight bit of a higher harmonic, you can think of it. There's a nice diagram right here. It's basically like having an AMS mixer in A+B mode, and in this particular example it looks like it would be like 2 triangle waves, with the second triangle wave a number of octaves above the first. Maybe this is like the 10th harmonic, I don't know. It's however many cycles are fitting into this this cycle right here. Maybe harmonic like 50, I don't know. So this shimmering effect does change rate when you change the LFO speed. So the shimmer is locked to the main LFO or the big LFO, however you want to think about it. So if I speed it up, hear how the smaller shimmering effect speeds up as well. And if I slow it down, see how that smaller shimmering effect also slows down. Very nice. So let's look at how many chorus blocks there are. So there's apparently 3, and we can see that pretty easily by just simply switching to a sawtooth wave. And let me show you what's happening in principle here. So I know what 3 sawtooth waves will look like by simply, let's switch to a double saw, by simply showing you. So we're listening to oscillator 1 right now. Let's turn that up. So we see 1 single cycle sawtooth wave. By using a double saw, I can turn up a second sawtooth wave, which is going to sound like an octave just because it's perfectly phase shifted by, what is that, 90 degrees? 0, 90. Or this would actually be 180 degrees. Phase offset. It's more of like it's acting like a delay. Or, yeah, I guess phase offset is correct, because it's like setting the start phase of the second oscillator. So anyway, that's what 2 sawtooths look like. And then if I have the phase offset for the third oscillator, we see 3 different peaks. So I know if I have, and again, you can think of like if I'm delaying any of those sounds, it's going to create a phase offset or like a start offset to any of those sawtooth waveforms. So if I have multiple delay lines, then I will see different peaks. I will see phase offset saws being summed in my oscilloscope. So let's check that out. Let's go back to one sawtooth waveform. And let's go to our chorus effect, again zeroing out everything so we can really see it. And so starting off with all the way wet, so we're only hearing the process signals, and having our depth on 0, we know we can start adding delay by turning this up. And we do see technically three different sawtooth waveforms because of the difference between the left and right channel. So we notice that there's a sawtooth waveform that is the same in both, and then we have an offset one in each channel. So it's kind of tricky to figure that out. Again, we're seeing 3 because there's the same one in both channels, and then there's one that's phase offset on the left and one that's phase offset on the right. Let's bring up the speed and see if these LFOs are traveling at different rates. I actually don't believe they are. I think we already discovered that they are simply phase offset LFOs. It's kind of a trip to see. And then we know that we could even add a 4th sawtooth by turning down the wet signal, so we can hear some of the original dry. And if you want to see that in more detail, we could just simply bring down these parameters and then all the way wet, bring in my dry signal. We can notice that the wet signal is delayed. Actually, let's start off with dry, and then we'll bring up the wet, and we'll notice that the wet signal is slightly delayed. And of course, that's going to be the same for each channel. And then the left and right channels have their own delays. And there's a loud truck outside that you may or may not be able to hear. Nice. So let's make a sound in practice. I'm not going to go into the AMS mixers, but the fact that they're here is awesome. It'll help dial in a nice sound. So let's go with, like, you know, the thickest sound that we can make. So 50-50 dry wet. Turn depth up. Let's turn speed up. So we've already quadrupled the sound technically. And now let's add some slight shimmer. So that sounds really nice. So if we were just playing a single note, that's wet, dry. So you can see just how much movement and motion that it adds. And yeah. Cool. And that's it for this ensemble effect. I hope you enjoyed that. And I'll see you on the Poly 6 ensemble, which will come up next.